This is the Educational Triage Podcast. Welcome. We invite you to come along with us on an exploration of interviews, issues, and other exciting and relevant topics in education, especially alternative education. They say alternative education is a laboratory for mainstream education. Why? Well, join us every week and listen in as Philip Summers
Aloha.
and I, Tony Hunt, jump in feet first to discuss issues that may affect our classes, students, communities, as well as our teaching. Please subscribe if you enjoy and find relevance in what you experience here. And if you haven't left a quick review, please do. We appreciate your candor and insights so we can improve as we move forward. Now, let's see what's on board today. Welcome back, everybody, to Educational Triage. This is Tony, and I'm joined here with my fellow aviator, Philip.
Hey, aloha.
How are you doing?
I'm doing a little scrudgy. I'm a little below average physically, feeling like maybe it is. I heard on the news today it's the darkest day of the year. This is strangely enough. Yeah, they said the meteorologist said he could do the math and could put it on. But he's not going to do it on the air. But it's the shortest day of the year. But
I thought that was the 21st.
Yeah, that's what everyone thinks. But apparently, you're not mistaken, people. Today was dark and short. At least short. But yeah.
Oh.
Well, anyway, I'm a little. Physically, I think maybe Oh, so how working schools,
Yeah, well, you're in the holiday doldrums too.
Well, yeah, that's too. But I went to this really cool celebration in a little downtown area. Mm-hmm. They blocked off the street, and then they had the artificial snow that they had at Disneyland, which was really fun. Yeah, okay. Years ago, we took my son to Disneyland as a celebration. I think it was for his graduation. Maybe my daughter. We did it both times. But we got there around Thanksgiving, just after, and they were just setting up for Christmas, getting kind of hardcore about it. Maybe just before. Anyway, they have this Christmas parade. At the end of it, it starts to snow. Yeah, it's like really tiny soap bubbles, and they don't get too slippery, and they don't get gunky, and they don't stick much. But it's like snow.
Wow.
And it's enchanting. And they did the same thing downtown Camas, Washington. And my granddaughter was just despite herself. Just, oh, it's snow. Wow. Just for like 45 minutes, she drew a crowd. She was just enchanted by it. But yeah, so I can't complain. Not much doldrums there. It was a really good time. But yeah.
Wow. So this evening, though, we're going to talk about education and big business.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
How is education big business? And you're going to lead us off, I believe. Isn't that correct?
Well, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that stuff over the years.
So take it away.
Yeah, well, I can kind of couch it as, so I went back into what I thought about the commons. I like to call it the commons, and I revisited the tragedy of the commons. How if you take too many fish out of the pond thing, which economically everyone should share it, the resources. And that's not what we're talking about at all. What I was trying to define was what is common to like communities. Like what are things that we pay for collectively? And I know economists and historians out there would know what that word is, and it just escapes me. But so collectively we pay for things like roads, because a road's a really expensive thing, and I can't afford a road on my own.
Right.
And what do I want 10 feet of road for? So, yeah, we buy roads, we buy infrastructure, water, excuse me. And one of the things that we have come to believe in, well, the past 40 years, maybe 45 years, is, and really understand to believe the underpinnings is that capitalism, competition, and privatization always does better than government. It's just kind of a assumption that people make, like privatization is always better, Give that to a business and it'll always do it better, more efficiently, and with least cost. And I've never thought that was true. It never seemed to ring true for me, but I've seen it take hold in America. And little by little, we start to kind of see that take hold in places where it shouldn't take hold. And one of the examples is, for example, in Detroit, the water system was privatized. And when the water system was being privatized, it was run like a business. And so it needed to keep above, and if not keep above its running costs, of course, make a profit. In order to do that, it had to raise costs. And when the costs couldn't be met by some of the residents, they shut their water off. Even though the laws are set up municipally to have that not occur,
Mm-hmm.
they still did it and were never penalized for that. So people living in their
Interesting.
homes lost their water. And
Wow.
yes, and so that's because you're running the water system of Detroit like a business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's like it's a privatization sort of thought. And so when you're looking at schools, this is what I'm getting at. I was doing some research on the internet and I came across a firing line from 1982, I believe. And look at here, I wrote it down because it's fascinating. 86. And on one side was William Buckley,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sowell, Thomas Sowell, and Milton Friedman. And on the other side,
Interesting.
yeah, were these three gentlemen who were, I can't recall their names, I really should, but they were a Stanford laureate, director of public schools, I believe, in Pennsylvania, and another very qualified individual trying to defend these schools against these three. And the whole issue was, should public schools be privatized?
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with the same things that are still coming up with now. Lower income and middle income people will receive the same benefit of choice that higher income people enjoy now with school choice. And that competition between schools will raise all boats, and
Mm-hmm.
that funding will increase, not
Mm-hmm.
decrease, because competition will increase. Just all of these things that we've heard over the years, which we've actually known aren't true. And those things have been proven true across like three sectors of the world who took them on. Sweden, for example, took on a more privatized approach and it tanked their system. As socialist Swedes, they took on the very privatized approach of school choice and the voucher system, and it tanked them. It destroyed the integrity of the education system there.
Mm.
And so they scream vouchers and school choice. And but they did say this in this firing line that the majority of money is being spent on administrators. Sound familiar? And I go,
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
it is.
One administrator takes, I mean, they basically pay for usually about 2 to 3 teachers.
Yeah, it's really interesting
And
that.
as you go up higher, they cover even more teachers. So the more administrators you have, the
Right.
fewer teachers you can actually afford. Yeah.
So the premise, follow me now. So my thesis is, I think that we're kind of under the impression that privatizing some things always make them better. But I would say some things you do not privatize. And I think education's a big fat one you leave alone. It's a loser. If you're going to invest in a business, education is a big fat loser. And here's one prime example. You can't get rid of bad inventory as a business does in education. There are some kids in that school. Oh my, we dealt with them. They take the resources of 4 kids or 5 kids each,
Hmm.
and they're expensive because they're, either they've got disabilities with their learning, or they need one-on-one, or they're just disciplinary. Or the alternative program that I taught in, our kids almost received double funding in
Let's
some
change.
ways.
Let me
Yeah.
let me jump in and let's requalify. Let's not call it bad inventory.
Okay. Yes. Let's not. Let's call them people.
You just have a certain segment of the population.
Yes, these are just people. You can't get them out of there. You can't go, well, those bolts over there. Yeah, we don't use them and they don't fit much. Just toss them. That doesn't work. Or,
Hmm.
we don't sell that anymore. It's like, oh yeah,
Right.
but these are kids. So you have
Hmm.
to invest in kids. You got to. There's no telling how much you have to invest. There's a lot of heart in it, but there's not always the same amount of funding in it, and that's because it shouldn't be like a business.
Well, business wants to run things efficiently and they like to go with the one size fits all approach. And when you have to do individualized structures, that takes the efficiency out of the workplace
Here, here.
and it makes it far more too focused for them
That really
unless
drives it home. Yeah, I was in a middle school today, and they were trying to make a middle school efficient. It was really something to see. It was difficult.
How do you make a middle school efficient?
Yeah, well, they'd had problems in the halls with kids running and collecting in bathrooms, and so they said, "Here's how it's
Speed
going to
bumps.
be." And then, as soon as I started walking in the halls after these talks, it was still pandemonious. And I thought, this is really interesting. How are they going to reel these guys in?
Yeah, but you're also in those weeks between Thanksgiving and winter break.
Yeah, we've only got how many days
And
before?
this is the time when a lot of kids, their whole world is upended because you have the haves and the have-nots. You have the kids that are going to be gone for 2 weeks and they don't have food, they don't have heat, they
Hmm.
don't know what's going on. They may not culturally connect with everything that everybody else is going on. People are talking about presents and maybe they're not getting any. And,
Yeah.
you just have all kinds of stuff. So, and it's
Need we
also,
say more?
there's even a lot of sugar in their diet.
There's a lot of shortcuts and meals, a lot of running around,
Hmm.
trying to get people places, or there's a lot of stress. There's some people missing from some people's lives, and that makes it for a little tough.
Yeah.
Holidays always bring up that, even if you've had a really great life, that gee, I wish grandma was here. There's that natural cycle of life and getting together, and it's dark outside, so people tend to be on the more lamenting
Sentimental.
side. Yeah, they're sentimental. They do miss their loved ones more. It's a lot
Yeah.
harder to miss your loved one when you're having a grand old time in July and it's really hot and you get out
Oh,
of the
there's so
water
much
and
more to do.
picnic and yeah.
You're not
You
just
make more
sitting around.
toast to your deceased relative
Yeah.
than you do. Let's toast to them. Yeah, but
However,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, you're really making those direct connections that businesses can't concern themselves with.
Mm-mm.
There's a cold-hearted capitalistic, survival of the fittest, by the way, was written by Darwin under, he was a great admirer of Malthus, and Malthus he was really a hardcore, economist of competition.
Hmm.
And competition comes kind of out of the life cycles of humanity that came from sort of the oppression of the churches and the rulers and the kings. And so when the capitalist idea of, the individual can come forward and be exceptional on their own, and that the individual holds their own virtues and their own fate, say, their own path before them. That's where
Hmm.
capitalism kind of came into being in humanity, and it's been the sort of the way it's been. Except now we're into more of a mode where we're trying to think about less nationalist sort of, this nationalist sort of capitalist. They didn't mix, because capitalists said the individual, and then the nationalist sort of one before it, where kings, rulers, states were more over, kind of over them. But there's a
Hmm.
conflict there. So the new wave would be trying to take care of the environment, but that capitalist strand that we all have in ourselves, like competition, survival of the fittest,
Hmm.
that's new, but it's only new since the advent of, owning factories, owning the means of production, and making that wage capital deal that we make. Someone owns it, and then they make a barter for your wage. Say, okay, you make my product, I'll give you this much per week.
Well, it's also part of the bartering system, and so
Mhm.
I mean, the bartering system also worked in people's favors. Otherwise, nobody would want to do it.
Right. But like the whole myth of like self-made billionaires, there's only like 600 billionaires in America. I mean,
Yeah.
those self-made billionaires came mostly from government. There's a lot of government subsidies of Tesla, SpaceX, a lot of government money in
Well,
SpaceX.
if
It
you're
wasn't,
smart,
yeah,
most any business knows you go for where you can get the money,
you
and
bet.
because you need the venture capitalists, you need to have the
Yeah.
money investing in you.
Well,
But
a lot of people don't know that. They think Elon is, he's like the dude. Oh, well, he's a self-made millionaire. No, he wasn't. He came from South Africa, emerald and gems and investments and things. Yeah, he started
right,
with from family money.
but he wouldn't
Yeah.
be anybody unless he had come up with these
Well,
ideas
that,
and been able
yeah,
to put those in, because
it
you've
did
got to
strike
be
lightning.
dynamic
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, yeah.
It's not enough to come up with the ideas and be smart enough to be, because he is an
Well,
engineer.
yeah. I'm not going to defend a billionaire, but none of us are going to become one. I
Well,
wouldn't
you don't
want
know.
to either.
Well, you
I
don't
mean,
know that.
oh, I totally know I can't be one.
There's always the lottery. Um,
Yeah, that's right. There is a way to make like 50 or $100, isn't there? I don't
Uh,
do it because I can't. Gambling to me is like I might as well just walk up to a stranger, and go, "Here's $50. At least now you'll have a good time." It's like because I don't get a charge out of gambling at all. Yeah, but, yeah,
I don't get a charge out of it. Every once in a while, I get like an itch in my shorts, and I go in and I do it.
but
So
I never win. It's like, well, there
yeah,
was that. I might as well give it $5
I
to the
think
guy next
once I
door.
won $2.
Yeah, I won a quarter in a some machine in Vegas, and I won $20 in quarters, and it took me like a day and a half to lose it all. Just
Hmm.
stopping randomly and pumping a machine.
Anyway,
But yeah,
back
anyway,
on track.
and that was
Back
on
on
an
track.
educational convention.
He did have the education. He does have the skills. He does have the foresight. He has
He
the
has the
vision.
publicity, that's for
He's
sure.
well, not before he didn't really. And so
Well, we
he
watch him.
he knew how to
We're
make
like
the connections, and he knew how to
economic
work with those
superhero.
in order for that to
Yeah,
happen. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to education and business.
yeah.
And
Ooh,
the
interesting. Education and business.
in 2020, the educational industry,
Yeah.
and this
Ooh,
does not include the testing services, was worth over $1.1 trillion.
there's gold in that Denver Hills,
By
huh?
2028, that will grow by 4.5%, I think I read, and it should be worth over 2.3 trillion, something like that. Now there are different factors, but that includes Cisco systems, that includes Zoom and Google Meets and Google and a lot of other
Yeah,
things. It also includes the textbook industry.
yeah,
Um, and now that everything is, we have a lot of stuff online, but then you take a look at a lot of the other businesses and how they've infiltrated into the school system. Look at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola's in the school system. You have, if you have vending machines, usually those are run by Coca-Cola or Pepsi or
Mhm.
somebody, and you run an exclusive so nobody can buy the competing product.
That happens. Yeah,
And
I remember us talking about that in meetings.
mhm. um, even the candy. So
Oh,
you have to be
that's.
very careful. You have to know what those products are. So if you go out to Costco or something to pick stuff up, you got to know whether or not you're
I
buying Coke or
remember
Pepsi.
that. Yes, we could not buy. You can't buy Pepsi products. We have a Coke machine or something. Is the thing.
Right,
Oh yes.
right. And that was district wide, which kind
Was
of
I
takes.
didn't know that.
Well, see, in my program, we didn't have vending machines because we were a one-room schoolhouse. So when we went out to
Mm.
buy stuff, there was never a connect.
Yeah, I can imagine from that site. Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but if you think about what is their intent, and their intent in coming into the educational space is make a profit.
Well, Google just introduced all of that nifty free stuff that was basically what Windows was offering in Office. And everyone thought it was just the cat's meow. And they were doing that to get everyone to use it and undermine Office. And I was watching that happen, going, you guys, this has got limits. And they're like, oh, we love it. And I'm like, wait a minute. They're doing it free to get you to use it. And pretty soon now Google is everywhere. Log on with your Google ID on many a site.
However, Apple was doing the same thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Apple was running all kinds of deals. Microsoft was running all kinds of deals. They all do it.
They
They all
all
do it.
do it. Yeah. I can't believe how Google did it so well, though,
Hmm.
because there were some problems with some of those. But yeah.
But then you also look at Odyssey, where you look at Edgenuity, you look at a
Oh, yeah.
lot of the other online that came. Their profit margins soared over the pandemic.
Yeah. I bet they did.
And
I
in
know
a, I
two of
was in a,
them.
yeah, well, I was in a meeting today,
Yeah.
and they were talking about, well, the pandemic really forced a lot of schools to become alternative educators. And they had to really sort of jerry rig and figure things out so that they could become more alternative. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, not where I was. They just threw everybody on the computer and told them that they were going to learn via the
Yeah.
computer. And they
I
didn't
would,
have a choice. And the
I would,
teachers didn't have
yeah.
a choice.
Wow.
So the teachers became more classified than anything.
I
So,
would actually argue to the extreme opposite. I would say that the pandemic broke a lot of us, and some of us in a lot of ways. And then I think there was that talk of when things get back to normal, I wish things would get back to normal, or I'll get things back to normal. And then when the schools came in, some of them got back to normal really too quickly, like Clark County, Nevada, Vegas
Hmm.
area. They really went back into class hard and fast as soon as they could. And the backlash was really, really bad. And so, they had to really kind of come back off that. And so I think a lot of people sort of kind of disregarded how bad the pandemic was. I don't think there was, but I think you're right. When they did come back, they were trying to make it like normal again, and it's not working.
Well, here's what a lot of people don't want to do, and that is they don't want to do a self reflection. They don't.
Hmm.
I hate to say it, but sometimes our brains become fat and lazy,
They do. Well, they shouldn't.
and
Yeah.
and they just become so used to ticking along the same track that having to come up with another way of doing things is seen as stressful. And if you don't have somebody to do it with, or if somebody else that you're doing it with is an Eeyore, it's and what you really need is a mental Tigger, or a kangaroo, or somebody else. Even Piglet would work, or even a Pooh, but not an Eeyore. Then you have a real problem. But
Yeah, it's
once you get
hard.
right, but once you are able to start collaborating with other people and come up with your own ideas, and you know, um, I'm just going to throw Teachers Pay Teachers is out there, and those are teachers
Yeah.
that have already done these things. And if you listen to podcasts like Jennifer Gonzalez and just get that stuff where she talks so broadly about different kinds of curriculum and different resources
Yeah.
that are out there, it really helps you so that you can start looking and finding the freshness in your
But
class.
are we able to do that anymore? I mean, I've, I used to have so much freedom, and I was so productive. In fact, getting corporations into schools, Intel even granted me a nice little prize once for being innovative educator in science
Hmm.
because I had so much fun doing it. I could never do what I did to get that award ever. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who could ever do anything to get that award because anybody to get that award had to do something that was innovative, and you can't innovate anymore. It's, I think, clamping down, and I knew that was the end when toward the end of my career when, like I said, when they said, "Why don't you use textbooks?" and I didn't realize that wasn't a question; that was a directive. I answered it bluntly. I'll never use textbooks exclusively.
I was told I needed to use textbooks
Yeah,
by and I said fine. And I went through and I wrote the curriculum using the textbooks because they determined that what we were doing wasn't quite good enough, even though
yeah.
the kids learned more from the materials that I was giving them about the subjects that we were doing
Hmm.
than they got out of the materials because it was more applicable and it wasn't just reading work and copying down everything, but that was what they wanted. So
They could measure it.
I let that's exactly what it
That's the
yeah, but
problem.
it's a real sloppy measuring.
It's a terrible measure. It measures a plate. How every 16-year-old is the same by this test. If you look at the premise of the test, it's like absurd to stop and take a snapshot of academic achievement at the age of 16 or 17 or 15. It's a sophomore, is it not? Grade 10.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was just scramble brains in grade 10. I don't think I knew if it was Thursday or Friday. Well, I knew if it was Friday, that's for sure, but I sure didn't know if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I was completely confused all the time. Measured my intelligence, it would have been like off some scale somewhere. I don't know where. Yeah. And so they go, well, our students aren't learning. It's like, well, they're learning, but they're not learning that. So let's
Hmm.
find out what they're learning, how they're learning, and let's get them to learn, in good ways and
Well,
effective ways, the good things.
well, just a few weeks ago, we had our during our last series. There was the two episodes on curriculum, And basically, if you know your curriculum and you know how to get it, and
Yeah.
if you have more enthusiasm for it, then the kids aren't doing just all this book work, which
Well,
doesn't really get them anywhere. But they can
yeah.
do something where they can do projects, they can be investigating, they can look at things. When we did science, I had them come up in on teams with things. But the first thing that we did with science was I had them do the nasty breath experiment. And that's where they would be on
Yeah.
teams and they would be
Yeah.
given garlic. They would be, and I can't remember what the other two things were, but they were given these things. And then they had to design an experiment that would take that breath, whatever those breaths, and then they were given Listerine strips. They were given different kinds of breath fresheners, and they would have to measure which ones were most effective. And so the majority of them had it all done within 40 minutes. And so I said, turn everything in. And when you're done with your break, you come back. And then I passed them out to everybody. And I said, you all failed. And they said, why? And I said, because you didn't follow through with what you needed to do. And so that's when everything came together for them to be able to structure. And
Mhm.
that's how they learned how to put together an experiment and how to get to everything, and they learned how to measure everything. So then later on they came up with their own experiments. One of the that one group hadn't said that we were their hypothesis was that because they looked at things and they said that we were in danger of flooding again as we did in 1996.
Mhm.
And so they put all the materials that they could together. They collected rainfall data, they did all kinds of stuff, and they put everything together. And so we had some others that did that. They're not going to get that from a textbook.
No.
And that's far more important than most of what they're going to be getting in a textbook because they learned how to do the measurements and they worked with each other on it. So it was very collaborative. It was very widespread with all of them.
Yeah.
And there was a lot more learning going on without them having to say, yeah, this is what we had to do in school. It's what we got to do in school.
And that's the learning model. Everyone hails Finland. Hail Finland! They're a great education system. They go to school less hours,
That's right.
but they do that kind of stuff. The reason they do is while they're at school, they're into their work. They're cracking
Mhm.
data. They're dividing up the work. They're doing some meaningful stuff, and they're learning really well. And
Mhm.
it's not tedious. It's just some of it's so tedious, and I figure it this way, and you really fleshed it out. If a student is bored and they're not learning, that's my fault.
It is.
That makes me a bad teacher. And
Doesn't make you a bad teacher.
if well, I look at it this way: if I'm in charge of the curriculum, you say I got these many students. You give me a reasonable amount of students, and say you can teach. Here's what they know. Here's their basic ability.
Right.
You can
You do a
teach what you
KWL.
want to do. And if they're not getting it, if they don't, then it's my fault because I can teach. But if I'm given like a textbook or something, I can still do it. It's a little bit harder, but I should make it interesting. If it's the same stuff over and over, like generally from a textbook, it's not me anymore, and that's the problem. It's not you or me. It's a textbook. Then we're not
Right.
teaching. It's not a craft. There's no art. There's no art in delivering a written word from a page anybody can read,
No.
which is
And
why para
what,
educators are being used a lot now.
well, what I didn't understand, and I still don't, because this started coming in many years ago with the scripted teacher,
Yeah.
where they would have classes and you were told you will read this to the students and they will do this. And so basically, the kids became programmed modules.
Uh,
And I could not understand why. And the district is like, we spent X number of thousands of dollars on this. You will do it. And I'm thinking, you wasted the money by giving it to me because I'm gonna do it my own way. No, you must read it verbatim. And the kids are sitting there and they're just like,
no.
WTF are you doing?
It kills authenticity.
It kills the
What are you doing?
creativity.
Yeah.
When I was in university, I was studying creative dramatics, and this, the big question that we had was, why do we kill curiosity and imagination in students when they come to school?
Because it's deviant.
That's not deviant. That's why Elon Musk is where he is because
Well, no.
he's able to imagine and put things down.
Well, yeah, but he's not in the school. Yeah,
Right.
because this, I want everyone to obey. I want that. I want you to read this so they get that information and they get these scores back on the tests. Not do it. And anything off that track is a deviation. And so if you get one kid in the back who goes, I'm not going to do that. If you don't read it, that's a deviation. And so, yeah, that's why it's
So it's
because
all about compliance.
it's absolutely about compliance.
And
It's
so
about somebody trying to control, or a system trying to control. I think that's what our system tries to do by saying to privatize education is the absolute most absurd premise ever.
well, I
It's
don't think
not a business.
it's not about privatization of business. I mean, Horace Mann had this down when he wanted us to go in, and we started from the Persian form, or not the Persian, but the what were they called? The Germans, Prussian,
Oh,
the Prussian.
Prussian model. Oh, I thought you were going all the way back to like Socrates. I'm going, wait a minute, Persia. Wait, well, he's one
No,
ancient,
Socrates.
ancient. That's
Think
kind of
about
modern, the Prussian. But no,
consider how Socrates taught, though.
no, yeah, it's very, yeah,
Very different. And
yeah,
so Horace Mann and these people,
yeah,
the Jacksonian school of thought
yeah,
was the kids will go in there because we need to create little workers.
yeah, yeah.
So
Because competition, will create
right.
the best system.
So
Competitors who win create the best thing.
right. So that's what we are doing. Now there were some businesses that came in. There was one in Texas with a furniture company, and they gave kids free schooling. I believe that this is what happened. They had the kids go in and they would work in the factory, and then they go back to school and they do their things to teach them skills on how to
Mm.
work in a furniture factory. Well, the problem is that nobody ever got any money for the work that the kids did, and what the furniture factory got was free labor. And so when they caught on, that kind of went by the wayside. And
Well,
there'd been
that's part of the system.
Amazon,
Yeah.
Amazon took over a school, and they taught the kids how to be in the warehouse and the different jobs in the warehouse and how to do all these different pieces of working for Amazon. So, we have
Oh,
and I
that's
have to give
almost
them
as
credit
bad.
for being innovative in getting free labor. We do have a school here in Portland, where the kids, they go and they have to show up, and it's for low socioeconomic deprived students who fit the category, and it's extremely popular. Portland tried to copy it. PPS did, because it goes with one of the Catholic schools. But
Mm.
the boys, it's all boys, and I don't know if there's one for the girls or if it's co-ed yet. But they show up to school wearing a coat and tie and white shirt. All these are provided for them,
Mm.
and they have to show up as though they're going to go to work every single day. They're partnered with a business where they go and they job share with other students in their class, and that business pays their tuition. So is there a gain? Yes,
Hmm.
because because they, the kids are getting their education, and it's been proven extremely successful, and the kids
Wow,
have
it's
done
interesting.
very, very well. Um, there are ways to partner with businesses. My last program, we were very successful with partnering with businesses where the kids would go in there, and sometimes they said, I feel like a slave. And it's like, well, if this isn't what you want to do for the rest of your life, because you're only there for 2 or 3 hours a day.
Well, yeah. These are like more. We're not talking about partnerships per se. We're
Right,
talking about just overall ways of thinking about education and
right.
the effects it has on it.
So,
That like actually its shortcomings. The
mhm.
way like we spoke about like the standardized testing. Everybody must be the same at the output of it. They must be able to do this by 18.
Right, but
The
they're
pushing of the college all the time. I see that constantly.
right, but the testing is so artificial because it
Yeah,
only goes for one kind of
yeah,
mean.
Yeah, like the fish that can't climb the tree. Yeah, it measures that. It measures one thing and one thing only. And so if you're that thing that needs not to be measured by that standardized testing, you're kind of out of luck. But yeah,
Right. So with businesses pushing education, there, believe it or not, but there were actually school districts that forbade teachers from buying any materials off of teachers pay teachers.
really,
Yes. They said that they
that's
would not be
interesting.
reimbursed, that they were disallowed from being able to do that.
Oh, they wouldn't. Oh, that's see. There's another economic sort of thing because that's more of a collective.
Yeah, it
Teachers
is.
helping teachers. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's like a
exactly.
curriculum share.
Yeah, and teachers know. I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
know what I'm
that's
looking for.
and Jennifer Gonzalez, she runs seminars, she runs classes
Yeah,
during the summer, and they're great classes. I was there for her first one, and it was wonderful. She does an incredible job. You learn a lot, you meet people all over the country, and
right.
it's really kind of a fun thing to do.
Well, yeah, if you just look at the whole
And it's worth the
advocates of
money.
this, in 1986 firing line, it's Milton Friedman, for goodness sake. He's
Mhm.
advocating for the privatization with the same arguments,
Well, I
It's,
can't believe that Thomas Sowell would do the same thing.
oh, he was quite convincing. It was like, holy cow, you guys. Because now in hindsight, we can see it's a failed system. It just really is a failed system
But it's
where,
identical. I mean, the
where you
problems are
hand out
still there.
vouchers, you just destroy the system. It's been done. It was done in Chile too with Pinochet actually. And this was where it was
Really.
tested by the neoliberals and Pinochet when Pinochet was there. The guy who liked to torture people. But anyway, and he was there and he
Come
gave
on.
everyone vouchers. Yeah, well, he had a soccer stadium for that. And gave them vouchers, and it destroyed the system. It was absolutely horrible for the system.
Except now we have the magnet schools, which is probably a better choice for students.
Yeah, there's that. We have to watch that business can do better attitude. It really that whole
Well,
competition and the business attitude is
magnet
not the
schools
way to
aren't
go.
magnet schools aren't necessarily around
No, they're
business.
not. They're not. And private schools aren't either. In fact,
No,
some of those
they're all
open,
nonprofit.
yeah, and
Most of them, majority of them, I'm going to say 90%,
are
95,
they?
98% are private nonprofit.
I worked on a whopping total of one, but I know the headmaster, as he said, as he was named, was always looking one eye toward fundraising, the big spring get together, the thing that
Hmm.
was going to, and it's parent relations
Hmm.
and things like that. So, yeah, it was a good school though, that really student minded. And I thought back on it just today, and I thought, yeah, they had it right. They really were concerned about the students, and the students knew it. There you go again. They
Hmm.
knew it. Yeah, it's a
Well,
good
when the
place.
students are validated, when the teachers are validated,
Yeah,
when everybody feels like it's not, I have to be at work by this time. It's,
yeah.
I get to be at work. I get to go to work. When I taught in the one room schoolhouse, people
Hmm.
said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I have the time of my life.
Yeah, when I
I
taught in that
love what I
four-room
do."
schoolhouse, it was the same thing.
And they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I teach a bunch of fifth graders with whiskers."
It's like
I,
I could never
and
explain mine because there was anything from a teen parent to literally a gangbanger, with
mhm,
tattoos. It's like it's hard to explain.
right. And see, what
It's like,
I had kids who came from homes where I had a student who'd never heard of toilet paper.
oh well.
And yeah, I don't remember
Hence
him
the need for
lasting long.
pre-assessment.
I had
But we
another
already
kid
know.
I had another kid whose parents thought it was kind of cool when he was an infant to dose his bottle with different kinds of drugs.
Ooh,
And so, we had a lot of abuse, a lot of weird stuff that happened, and some
oh
of the
my
nicest
goodness.
and sweetest kids in the world. And you know, it just kind of tugged at your heartstrings a lot of times, and
Yeah.
you worked with them when you could, but there wasn't a whole lot that you could do outside of just teaching them. But when we taught, we had a wonderful time. So it was a safe space for them to fail. It was a safe space for them to become themselves and actually explore doing what they were doing. They liked coming to school for the most part.
Well, in a lot of ways, it was like the one thing in their lives that was sort of stable,
Hmm.
consistent, and things, they achieve things
And
in little ways, big ways, but the little ways was the way it was working. It took them a while.
right, and it was welcoming.
It was.
But we didn't have, we had partnerships, but big business didn't come in there until the district forced us to have the bloody textbooks.
That was it. The textbooks and then the testing.
Hmm.
Um, and
But
then
see,
just
all
that focus on administration down, like they gave you the script. I can't believe anybody ever gave me a script. I would always refuse to use it.
here's the funny thing: the year before they forced me to use textbooks, every one of my kids that did the state testing exceeded in mathematics, in writing, and in science. And I could not believe it. I was so jacked. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing something right." And then I was told, "Yeah, now you have to use textbooks." And I thought, "Why?
Why?
Why? It makes no sense."
Yeah.
But it's because the district says that they spent all this money, so they all need to be doing the same kind of thing. And it's all about compliance.
If somebody made a decision somewhere, and you got to wonder where. And I think that decision was made with a business mind, not an educator's mind.
It was, and um,
And
it
that's the
was
problem.
it was the superintendent,
Hmm.
and who I did not. I tried. Apparently, there were many attempts by his office to get in touch with me, and I was able to safely avoid that. Um, because he wanted to talk to me about some other stuff. But that one and the one that is currently there now were probably the two most vile. Can I say that? Can I say superintendents are vile?
You
The two
can.
most vile entities that invaded that district and actually did so much infection and so much damage. So, but they're both, I swear that they're getting kickbacks somehow.
Well, it may well be. I mean, that's how business works, isn't it?
Right.
A lot of decisions are made on the golf course, and I don't see any
Well,
students on the golf course.
I didn't see any superintendents on the golf course either.
I've seen superintendents on running courses. I have. I was doing an ultra marathon once, and he was on it there too with
Oh,
his friend.
wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah, he's there. He was a very diplomatic guy. But
But
yeah, it
getting
turns
back,
out he did that.
okay, 1.1 trillion. And let me see if I can find the names of these.
It's just incredible, isn't
Well,
it?
yeah. So let
it
me,
it's big business, and that's the thing. It shouldn't be. The money's being spent, but it's not being spent on the students. I'll tell you one
no.
thing. Here's what's happening, in my humble opinion. If you have, for example, the Detroit situation where they ran the water department like a business, and then they just cut people off of water in their homes when they didn't pay their bills, things like that. Um, because they rose their water rates on them because they were running a business and things weren't going too well for them. So in any case, with the schools, what happens is I think is it's not shutting the water so much off, but we shut down the quality little by little. We kind of take a brick out of
Mhm.
that big wall we had. And I think what's happening is now I'm hearing a lot of talk about teacher shortage, this and that. And I'm actively looking for a teaching job. I'm thinking I want to get back full time, and there are none. I'm looking, but there are no real certified teaching positions open. If there's a big shortage, where are those jobs? Now, there are a lot of para educators. And when I go to schools, they're always crying for teachers to sub. And para educators are filling in. And sometimes they're going without teachers in classrooms, but they're not hiring per se, at least not on the open market that I can see. So what I can say is I
Weird.
think what's happening is the education system, we all know this, is failing little by little by little, but the water is still trickling through the faucets. It's like we're not investing enough money in our education system. They're saying there's a teacher shortage, yes, but we made the connection as a public and then hire more teachers. But somewhere in there, there's not enough infrastructure or cash to hire those teachers. So they're making do without, and that's damaging the system, and the system gets damaged year by year by year with that attitude of a business approach instead of investing like we said, and the kids that are kind of the losers, the kid that takes the double funding, they they're it's a kind of an up and down profession. If you don't
Hmm.
do that, you're going to suffer, and I think that's what we're doing. I think that the public education system is long since broke, and it just has been patched up with enough duct tape and whatever, scotch tape and glue to just hold enough water to look okay. But I think it's long since broke, real broke. And we think it's just fine. We complain about all the symptoms, but the patient is dead. I think that's my humble opinion.
Who's the patient then?
I think that public education needs to be freed from the bounds of certain minds that say it should be like competition, the best schools, taking funding away from schools that weren't reaching tests and under No Child Left Behind,
Hmm.
penalizing the losers. In what realm is penalizing the loser children going to help them? It just forced them out of the system. And then charter schools moved into the neighborhoods. It
Hmm.
was really a terrible thing. And it was really backward. We need to really reinvest in schools, really look at them, stop building them so big, stop stop fitting kids into one size fits all,
Well, it
stop
makes no.
looking at it as profit and loss, and start looking at it as kids and whole lives. We have the wrong attitude. We don't look at it long range. These are people. Yeah,
Well, exactly. But as long as you have policymakers who don't know what they're talking about, making the policies for them.
exactly.
When you have administrators who maybe taught 2 years in a school in their entire 30 some odd years of education.
Or none. I know one of the,
Hmm.
the curriculum instruction guy, none, zero, not one day in a classroom. How does
Right.
somebody like that tell me what to teach with?
Okay. So
Anyway,
I'm going to tell you who the key players are for the $1.1 trillion in 2020 and the market value of 2.3 trillion in
oh dear.
2028. It would be the Wall Family Enterprise,
Mhm.
Cisco Systems, EduComp Solutions Limited, Desire to Learn, Blackboard Inc., Pearson PLC, AWE Acquisition Inc., Sum Total Systems Inc., Tata Interactive Systems, Smart Technologies, ABCMouse.com, Saba Software Inc., Promethean Inc., McGraw Hill Education, NIIT Limited, Adobe Systems Inc., and Ellucian Company. Those are the top players.
Well, business is good in schools. And
It
if they're
is.
public schools, where's that money going? The same thing's happening in the military too. Public money is going to private contractors. And research and development, as far as
Mhm.
like, yeah, it goes into like drugs, especially. The development of drugs was publicly funded, and then the profits are privately kept. It's like, what are we doing? Why do we do this to ourselves? We
Well,
just
that one's been,
revere the capitalists so highly that they can do no wrong while they just pick our pockets.
well, that's because they invest heavily into the candidates.
Yes, it is so true, isn't it? We've just got to realize that now it's getting into where our kids are. Jeez.
Okay. Okay. So we got to wrap up.
Let's.
So what are your words of wisdom? Because we kind of bounced all around the court on this one.
Well, I think,
Um,
yeah, my words of wisdom are stop trying to apply the principles of competition and capitalism to everything. There are some things that it doesn't apply to, like common good, protection, uh, the public welfare, schools, fire, medical. We all know that privatizing medical in the United States doesn't work. It's expensive and ineffective. Somebody's getting really rich. Those people, there are few of them, and they're getting richer and richer all the time. We should reevaluate that, really. And you and I have seen it, where it used to be, it wasn't ideal, but we could focus on the kids. And now there's no focus on kids for the sake of making the almighty dollar.
well, they
That's
liked it.
pointless.
Well, what's happened is schools have become a corporate structure.
Yeah.
That's how badly it's become, how badly it's gotten. And where it used to be, now when you and I first started in that district, it was like one big family. You could pop into the superintendent and just stand there and talk jokes. You could talk to him about anything. You could go in, you could talk to anybody in the central office. It was not a big place. It was
No.
almost like a four wide trailer,
Hmm.
mobile home. It was not huge.
It wasn't meant to look like a corporate office like it does
No.
now. It looks exactly like a corporate
Now, when you
office.
go in, you have a receptionist who will not let you go back unless you
Yes,
show something, and then you have to have codes in order to get into this one,
exactly.
codes to get into that one. What's your purpose?
Yeah.
You need to wait out here until somebody comes out and gets you, and
Hmm.
then you go in, and it's like they've been hoarding people. They have packed when they first moved into this building, people, it was somewhat empty. I mean, it was comfortable to walk around. Now you need a map to figure out where people are because there are so many cubicles. There is so much going on in there,
Hmm.
and you don't know where anything is anymore, and nobody likes each other. And I think it was about 15 years ago, maybe almost 20 years ago, my boss looked at me and said, "Do not go into district office." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "It's toxic." She said, "It is not a place you want to walk into. It's gotten just terrible. It's no, don't."
There you go.
So, and
Yeah, we don't have to follow this model. It doesn't have to be this way. We just think that's the way it is. Get bigger, you gotta start doing this stuff, and we gotta run it like
no.
a business now. We gotta tighten the ship up, and and there's literally it's you can see it everywhere. College football, for goodness sakes, the transfer portal. They're paying players, paying college football players to transfer to schools. We'll give you 200,000 to play for us. It's like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, that's insane. That makes no sense.
No, it doesn't.
Except if you look at it in the realm of business, and it's like, well, yeah, it totally evolved that way. We're talking
Mhm.
big money. But why are we always talking about big money? Anyway, we were just
What's the
consumed with it in America.
Well, it's not bad to have big money. I mean,
Well, we're consumed with big money. The whole idea of big money is other systems geared toward big money or run by big money.
well, I think America is enticed by flash.
Oh yeah,
And
we
even the
don't think.
people I know who say that they are more socialist and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they are pumping out everything that is made because of capitalism, and they're showing off their new togs, they're
Right.
showing off their new kicks, everything, and they're like, but
Mhm.
but they're kind of subtle about it, but they're like, yes, this is my, you know,
I'm socially liberal but fiscally conservative, and they don't see the freaking insane paradox of that. It's like, are you out of your mind? What? What? As they push
so, and I
an
hope we're not
elderly
insulting
diabetic on
anybody in there,
welfare and
but
into the pool. I mean, come on.
it's, I just, what I want is for the kids to be able to learn, and I want people to be free enough to be able to teach them because we are professionals. We have our degrees. We know what we're doing. And if we don't, then you need to get out.
Well, yeah,
And
and
that's how you're going to willow out the chaff.
the
But you've
judges
got to
is
be
the
able to do
kid.
that.
Yeah, the judge of it had been the kids for the longest period of time. We were
Hmm.
meeting the standards. Yeah, they were quite well thinking adults when they left my classroom. I don't know anymore.
Hmm.
Because I don't know. I don't get to use my standard, and it's their standards. I don't know. I just
Hmm.
hope these kids come out with
Yeah,
some
that they
sort of
came up
wisdom.
with in a committee meeting and they had
Yeah,
nothing to do with the
and
classroom.
yeah, because Milton Friedman thinks that that's the way. That's just the way we should have the same curriculum to make them good American kids. It's like, what? Talking about
No,
community and everything. It's like, I think that's what's fracturing community
no.
here. Anyway,
No, actually, standardization came from the business community. So,
yeah.
okay.
All right.
So we're going to wrap it up. And
That's
I'm going to say next week we are going to take a look at SEL, social emotional learning. And there's one thing I forgot to say, Philip.
hmm. Oh, that.
Have a great holiday break.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will see everybody back in 2 weeks on New Year's Day,
2023.
2023.
Everything will be magically different that day.
Yes. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful season. No matter what you do, travel safe, be good, leave us a review, subscribe, and if you like us, recommend us to others and share the link. And we will see you next year. Adios.
Yes. Aloha.